Hello, welcome to R&B Reviews. I'm Rob, and today I'm going to be doing a special video. Recently, I discovered on YouTube that the Criterion Collection has their own YouTube channel, and for those of you that may not know, the Criterion Collection is a series of movies that got released on DVD that are classic films, art house films, all kinds of stuff. And I discovered that they had a YouTube channel, and they have a series called Closet Picks, where basically guests and celebrities and actors and directors come in and they go through a closet full of Criterion DVDs at the Criterion office, and they pick DVDs that either they've seen or movies that sound interesting to them. And I thought, why don't I do a version of that? Now, as you can see, I'm not in the Criterion Collection office, and this is obviously not their not their closet. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to do my own version of the Criterion Collection closet pick. And how I put this video together was I looked on the Criterion Collection website and I looked at titles, and how I did this process was I made like a list of movies that either I had heard of or seen or sounded interesting, and then I tried to cut it down to just a few titles, and then I tried to see if I could find any at my local library, so that was another contributing factor involved in that. So I'm going to go through each one. Some of these movies I've seen, some of them I have not. I'm going to go ahead and do them, so let's get started. Now, the first one is actually a movie that I actually discovered because of the Closet Pick video. I watched the one that was hosted by Nathan Lane, and he talked about this movie called Rafifi. I had never heard of this movie until just a couple of days ago, but basically he called it a heist film, and it sounded very interesting. Basically, the director of this movie is Jules Dassin, and he had directed a lot of movies in Hollywood, but unfortunately he got blacklisted in the 1950s and he moved to Paris, France, and he was trying to find work. Apparently, from what I heard, he was offered this script and he wasn't really crazy about it at first, but you know, work is work, so he went ahead and did it. And the movie is basically a story about four ex-cons who want to do one final heist, and from what I can tell, it's a great mix of suspense, dark humor, brutality, and yeah, it just sounded like an interesting movie. So now, Nathan Lane, thank you very much for recommending this movie. Now I'm going to have to watch it and maybe review it. I don't know. The next movie is the only one that I have in my actual collection, and that is The Uninvited. It is a ghost story. The movie was released in 1944, and it's about this brother and sister that buy this old house that's haunted by a ghost. There's a tragic story involved, and it's very well done. It's one of the first ghost movies that had come out from Hollywood. Usually ghosts were used as like a gag for comedies, like where a bad guy decides to try to scare the comedy team with ghosts and make them think the house is haunted. This is very well done. It's very suspenseful. It's a great movie, The Uninvited. I also reviewed this movie on my channel, so if you're interested, check it out. Next up is a movie I highly recommend. It's The Third Man. This is a great movie that came out after World War II, 1949. Although Orson Welles is the name that's usually attached to it, the true star is Joseph Cotten, it's a very great movie about, you know, it's set in post-war Vienna, and it's, again, very suspenseful, great black and white photography. There was a couple of slow spots when I saw this, but I mean, this is a movie that I really enjoy watching nonetheless. It was written by Graham Greene and directed by Carol Reed, and very well done. If you have not seen The Third Man, you've got to check this movie out. Next up is a movie that I used to hear a lot about when I was a kid, but I never saw, and oddly enough, I don't really hear anybody talk about this movie at all. It's called The Spy Who Came from the Cold. Now, I've never seen this movie, but from what I gathered, it's based off of a book by, and I'm probably going to butcher his name, I'm sorry, John Le Carre, who wrote a lot of British suspense thriller books, and like Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. And this movie stars Richard Burton, and basically he plays a agent that gets taken out of the cold, aka the Cold War. He tries to adapt to normal everyday life, and he's struggling, and he gets plucked back into a new mission. This sounds like an interesting movie. It's directed by Martin Ritt, and again, you've got Claire Bloom in this movie, Cyril Cusack, and of course the great Richard Burton. Great. I'm ready to give it a shot. Hopefully it's a good movie. Next up is another movie I highly recommend that I've seen. It's 12 Angry Men, where basically 12 men are in the jury and they're deliberating a case about, if my memory serves me right, it's about a Puerto Rican teenager who's charged with murder, And it's interesting, even though you don't know the characters' names, after a while you know who they are based on how they act. And one of them might be a bit bigoted, one of them is just wants to quickly get this case done so he can go home and watch a baseball game and stuff. It's a good movie. This is actually based on a TV movie. Back in the 1950s, there were TV shows that did weekly plays. The original 1955 version's on here. I kind of like this one a little bit more than the movie because I feel like it's more raw and more intense, but nonetheless, Sidney Lumet directed the movie version that came out a couple years later in 1957. It's still pretty good. I love how tight the shots get over time. Like, it gets very claustrophobic as you start to see people perspirate with sweat, and it gets intense, and great drama. So yeah, this is another movie I'd highly recommend. Okay, this is not the Criterion Collection edition, but this movie is part of the Criterion Collection, and it's Anatomy of a Murder. Great movie about working a courtroom case. Oftentimes you see in the news, people are like, I'm only going to court for my clients so they can win and get justice. But oftentimes it's because they want to get paid in order to survive. But this is a very great movie about working behind the scenes on the case and all the tricks that the lawyers try to use to get their point across, to try to sway their jury. And great acting by James Stewart as a small town lawyer who was a prosecutor, but unfortunately he lost. And he's trying to find a case, and he finds this case about a lieutenant that's accusing of murder, and the murdered person that he allegedly murdered sexually assaulted his wife, and the prosecutor is played by George C. Scott, and he's helping out the new prosecutor who still doesn't know quite what he's doing. Very great drama. The movie is 160 minutes, but to me, it didn't feel that way. It really flowed. It's really great. Again, very intense scenes. And this movie actually got banned in Chicago and a few other places because the movie was directed by Otto Preminger, and he was known for pushing the envelope. And actually, this movie is might have been one of the first movies to mention stuff like rape and sperm and other things that were currently you didn't see in movies up this point. This movie came out at a time when the golden age of having clean films was starting to die away, and people wanted more realism, more grit, and not really the fantasy type films that were offered in the 1930s during the Depression. But this is a great movie. So check out Anatomy of a Murder, and make sure you check out the the Criterion edition. Last but not least is a movie that I've never seen, and I know I'm going to get some flack for it, but Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Now, I've heard a lot of great things about this movie. Like I said, I have not seen this movie. I've seen The Rum Diaries, which is another movie about Hunter S. Thompson, or based on one of his books. So, I mean, I've never seen, actually, I don't think I've ever seen a trailer or any clips from this movie, but I hear from people how awesome this movie is, and great visuals. It's directed by Terry Gilliam. Great stuff. So, I'll probably have to give this movie a try. Okay, so that's my Criterion Collection pick. Anyway, if you have any Criterion movies in your collection, let me know what you have. What are some movies that are in the collection that you'd like to see or have seen? Please post your comments in the comment box below. And thank you very much for watching.